And now you, too, will understand. So what does standards-based education mean? What does it mean? It's a standards-based design. We use it to drive what we teach, drive what we expect kids to learn, drive how we assess what they learn, and remediate or corrective teach what they get wrong. The goal is learning. Is the goal for everyone to pass? No. But is the goal for everyone to learn and meet the threshold score on the test? Yes. So does that mean that they'll reach a 70 in the class? I hope. But I don't want, my goal isn't about grades. My goal is about EOC and your kid's success. Do you want your child to not only have to take the 4 required tests for next year, plus 2 additional makeup ones, and then 10 days of remediation prior to each of those makeup ones? When are they going to go to school? They're out of class so much. That's why the fall semester is so short, because we need all those days in the spring to test. 45 days. We have to go further than the textbook. We have to go further than here are the vocabulary words, define them, they're due tomorrow, and you get a 0 if you don't do them, and you get 100 if you copy the back of the book, and you get 100 if you copy your friends in lunch. Or now they're doing it on Uvu together, which is like Skype, but you can put 5 people on it. That's what they do. They work together. They collaborate. We're a social generation. That's okay. Collaborate together and learn. But I'm not going to grade you on what you do. I'm going to grade you on what you know. Because if you copy, you won't. You just won't. And I'll tell you, kids are going to fail. And some kids are going to do well. Here's the model that we kind of look at when we think about standards-based instruction. It's differentiated instruction, driven by the standards, but then we differentiate the grading to align with the standards so our data is consistent. Because if I teach by the standards, mastery teaching, for mastery learning, but then I assess by the unit test, what data do I use? And how well do you know how you're doing? So we identify the standards, we determine our strategies, we plan, look at the arrows back and forth. Do you see how complicated this is for us? But it's okay, it's what we do. It's what we do anyway, just different. This is what teachers do all the time. But now we do it differently. So what's the purpose of SVG? Yeah, you got all that information up there, but really, what's the purpose of standards-based grading? You could teach that way, fine. Don't grade that way. Well, why? Because it's different? Yeah, it's different, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Is it perfect? No. But did you think the traditional model was perfect? No. I can tell you it's not. From an insider, it's not. The purpose is to align the grading with the state standards, to get consistent and accurate data, and have a common criteria for the course, to pass the course. Another purpose, to communicate to you your student's educational plan and success. Do you want to be surprised in June? You want to go distinguished graduation plan? Because if so, you need a 1400. Are you on track to get there? Are you getting a 4+ on every standard? Have you gotten enough data throughout that you're confident that you know that you're at the commended level in every standard? If not, you need to know which standard you need to go back and work on to get from just passing to distinguished. Work habits sometimes influence grades. Students that have good work habits typically get good grades. Students that have bad work habits typically get bad grades. Who learns what? We're not sure. We assume that the student with the higher grade learns more. And usually they probably do. But they learn more than the student that gets the low grade, sometimes. But somebody in this audience has a kid at home that's really smart, brilliant, so much potential. You're not living up to your potential. I have 2 of those. Our purpose, to raise achievement not grades, achievement. Grades are a byproduct. We're raising the achievement by clearly communicating the target and how well you're going to get there, and where you are in getting there. And did you, and at what level? Essentially, and we're going to go specifically into what a rubric looks like, but just overall, and I know you guys already have seen this. We have consistent things, not only at our campus, but across the nation for standards-based grading. It's consistent. It may be interpreted slightly differently, but it's consistent by campus here. It's a 0 to 4 rubric. You have a 4 plus, you have a 4 minus, you have a 3 plus, you have a 3, I mean, it's the whole scale from 50 to 100. The 5 could be considered a 100. A 4 plus plus could be considered a 100. Regardless, it's above the 4. It's the highest you can get. It's a 100. We're going to talk about hundreds in just a minute. Each rubric doesn't have different things on it. It has one big thing that leads up to higher levels of understanding. Let me show you what I mean. You may remember this graphic already, right? Remember this? You guys are good with that? Now let me show you what you haven't seen. Look at the 3, which is the proficient, the state calls proficient. Those are your readiness standards. If you get proficient, which is a 3, if you make a B, I don't even care if it's a B minus, although I'd rather it be higher. It's more consistently high, trending towards applying it to real world. But if you get a B in a class, on a standard, every single standard, you should be ready to pass the EOC. Look at partially proficient. These are your supporting standards. Sometimes they're grouped together, sometimes they're split apart, but they all feed into a readiness standard somewhere. Math is a little rocky in the geometry, but we haven't gotten our final copy yet. The other contents, science, world geography, beautiful. English, very nicely. So it was really easy for us to create rubrics. It was hard to word them, but it was easy to know what went in each one. If you're partially proficient, which means you're not quite totally at the top of the readiness standard, but you've got a couple of the supporting standards, like you're at the supporting standard level, that means you're going to get 35% of the questions on the EOC because those are over supporting standards. They're written at the level of the 2. It's a little less comprehensive than the 3, which is the readiness standard. If you see the dotted line, remember the dotted line, which is the threshold? If you get a C, let's just use that. If you get a C on a standard, you're in jeopardy right there of not being able to answer all those questions. If you get B's on everything else, then you have to think about which ones you got the 2 on, and those are the ones you won't be able to answer the readiness standards questions for. You will be able to answer the supporting standards. And depending on which supporting standards they decide to put on the test, you could either get them right or not. That is why, if you're partially proficient on some and proficient on others, you could meet that threshold score, your overall EOC score. So some of the students that are C students could pass EOC. Could. The beginner level, these are threshold statements. This is the beginning level of new curriculum that feeds into the readiness standard for the state, not prior knowledge. Prior knowledge is the 0. The 1 is the beginner level, the threshold statements. If you get 1s on everything, you won't pass that. You won't pass EOC. You just won't. Not unless you do something else. Because the data doesn't support you being at a level that's ready to pass the EOC. The advanced, if you're not only mastering the curriculum at the 3 and you can get some of those 3s, those 3 questions right, they have increased rigor questions intentionally placed on the EOC test that take the readiness standards and apply them in a greater context. They may apply them in a new environment. They may combine two together and ask for the relationship between them. It's a synthesis, which is creating something new out of something else. It's a synthesis level of question. If you get those right, you get commended. Kind of, that's how that works. It's still a percentage on the EOC, but based upon the level of the questions, you really could only answer the ones up to the level of your understanding. And the way the percentages work out, that's how they're going to do it. The score for commended, the score, and we don't know what those scores are. We don't know how they're grading it. We just know what we're telling you today. So, and just think about this. Let's just say hypothetically. Teachers are on students' tails all the time. To learn, to learn, to learn. Do your work, do your work. You can't sit in here and do nothing. Get a pencil. You don't have a pencil, I'll give you a pencil. Get your paper. Where's your paper? Call your mom. Get your paper. Get it out. Pay attention. We gotta do this. You have to do this. Come on. What do you bet? How do you do this? They're on them. We're on all kids. You got a B, you're not a B student, you're an A. You got a B, what are you doing? Come on, man, focus. You get your A. Look at it again. What are you talking about? You're the A. What are you doing? That's what we do. Because we want to push them up. But even if we get those kids that have never been successful, like even to passing, hypothetically, they're not going to pass the EOC. They have to retake it and take it. They have to get to that level 3 to pass. So making a D doesn't even matter anymore. You can't learn at the D level and pass the EOC. Oops. Here's an example of a world geography standard. This is the rubric. It's in a little bit of it, it's written differently, but I couldn't fit the whole rubric on here. It's too landscape, okay? This is what I think this is January for World Geography. World Geography piloted started last January, so this is one of our very first rubrics that we created. The 3, which is the testing level, says that they can compare and contrast the 3 Abrahamic religions. They can manipulate the information about the 3 of them. They can compare them, contrast them, and analyze that, okay? Now, before you can even get to the 3, before it's prior knowledge, we're not talking about prior knowledge, the very threshold level, well, you gotta know what the 3 Abrahamic religions are. You gotta know what they are. What are they? What does that mean? Where are they from? Okay. And once you get that, which some kids can do in 2 minutes, some kids, 2 weeks. Then how are they the same? So now you know what they are. Well, what are some characteristics that they share? Why do they share that? Why do you say that? Based upon what? Okay. Now once you kind of know how they're similar, now compare and contrast. That's higher level, that's 3. And let's take it advanced, which means we make it relevant, we bring it to the real world and make authentic examples. That's what the state says. So now how do these 3 Abrahamic religions, how do you see them today? How do you know that what is a result today that could have been from that? How does it affect your life? You should hear some of the stuff we got last year on that. Brilliant stuff. You guys got some smart kids. Here's an example of an EOC release tax question over a standard that your students just finished. You know the ones where they had the Beatles and the Beatles went across, does anybody ring a bell with anyone in here? Okay, I see heads nodding. Kids just needed to be able to explain to us why the beetle with the short legs or whatever, which one and why. It wasn't a cookie cutter. What's the correct answer? I need you to think and defend. Get to the level of the 4. Do you see this question? Our kids can answer this question. If your student made a B, they ought to be able to answer this question. And it is not a straight knowledge question. Some of you may be able to answer this question based upon how you helped your kids last 6 weeks. When we first got our tests, the release test, which was just a month ago, we had a district meeting and people were going ballistic. They were like, did you read these questions? Did you see these? Oh my gosh, these are ridiculous, they're incredible. Did you see their reading level? I mean, all the things that we've kind of gone through your head today. And they're scary. When I saw this question, I thought, we're good. Our kids can do this. Other campuses? I don't know. Maybe not so much. Because if you just do a chart on genetic, on species and all that, and just kind of, it's not at the level of thinking to be able to answer this. The question has to really align with exactly what you were taught if you're only taught knowledge and skills. And that's a gamble we're not in a position to play. We're not going to play with your kids, or anyone's. We can't. So does research support it? Yes. Research says, years worth of research says it increases achievement. Kids learn better in an environment because you're working towards the same goal. Teachers know what the standards are, know what they need to do, know what they need to assess, etc. Kids knowing what they have to do allows them to do it and move on. Some of your kids want to say, what do I have to do? How many points is it worth? And just let me get it in because I want the 100. Well, now they say, what do I have to learn? Let me know, where do I use to get there? And let me just get there. And let me just show you that I got it. I don't want to do that stupid worksheet anyway. How about I create something? Okay. Students look at the rubrics to know where they need to go. Parents, know them and you know where your kid is. We're just about done. So how's it different than traditional grades? Well, I think some of you could probably already answer this now. We focus on the levels. We communicate better data to you. It's a balance of formative and summative. It's not always a formal paper pencil. A lot of it's what we call unobtrusive assessments, which means, just like I did with you with the 1, 2, 3, 4. I could look in the audience, and I'll tell you right now, there's only about 2 of you that had a 1 up. So what I could do is I could catch you on the way out and say, I noticed you were a 1. You didn't do a paper pencil, you didn't do anything, and I did an assessment. That's what teachers do in the classroom. If your student is on target for the day, it doesn't really matter what the target was. I know you're with me. If we only have covered up to what the 3 Abrahamic religions are, and you've got it, I don't have to assess you individually to know that you've got it. I just figure out who doesn't have it and everybody else does, and we continue to move forward. As you progress through the curriculum, you can tell when people start to drop off. Does that make sense? It increases student responsibility. Although we haven't seen an awful lot of that yet, I'm going to be honest with you. Because I think we have some flaws, and I think you can help us with that. Dr. Marzano says, the most important difference between standards-based education and traditional education is the focus of what is learned, not what is taught. Just because the teacher taught it and covered it is not good enough. Did they learn it? Or is it the same? This is important. They both reflect work ethic and skill. You know, kids that had good work ethic last year are going to still have good work ethic this year, and it'll be shown in the grades. They still report the same way on GPA and transcript. A, B, C, D, F, 92, 198, 80, 82, you know, the standards average out, you get a grade. It's the same. They still include tests, quizzes, labs, all that stuff. They correlate directly with a 100% scale. Completely. There was a school district in Texas, and you may have heard, you may have not heard, that attempted to go standards-based education, but they really only went standards-based grading, and they graded 1 through 4. They didn't change what they do on the instructional side, only on the grading side. They've recently completely stopped because it created havoc in the community and with the kids and with the teachers. Firstly, the principal came in 5 days before the start of school and said, this is what we're doing. Everybody starting, they were like, what? Every teacher. Secondly, what they did was they reported a 1, 2, 3, or a 4 on the report card, on the transcript. So you had 3 years, seniors had 3 years of traditional looking grades, and then you had a 1 or a 4. But what was interesting is to get to the 4 meant you completely mastered it, which really, in the SBG model, the philosophy, would mean 100, not an A. So to get a B, you had to score kind of at the A level. Does that make sense? Flawed. This is flawed. We report the same way. The way we get there is different. What we report, it looks the same on the transcript, on the report card. So can you get 100? Absolutely. I've heard a lot of parent feedback that says, you can only get a 98. You can only get up to a 2. That's not fair. If on this standard, students can only get a 2. How's my student going to ever get a B or an A? Right now, if I send an assessment around on EOC to this audience, some of you in this audience are brilliant. I know you are. I know you are. I have your kids. We know that you are. But if I gave you an assessment on EOC and I wrote it at the 3 or the 4 level, many of you would fail. Would that be an accurate representation of how well you understand everything I've taught you so far? No. I would give you an assessment up to the 2 level. You'd probably get hundreds on it, which means you'd get a solid 2, which means you're on track with where we are. You're on pace. Doesn't mean you have a C in the class. What's really important is where are you based upon where you should be, and where are we in the grading period? Because if we're at the end of the unit and you still have that 1 or that 2, you're in trouble. You're not where you're supposed to be, because we're teaching to the 3. And then we're pushing you to the 4. We're trying to get kids to go to the 4. The 100% scale, the 100% score, if it was the beginning of an assignment, of a unit, and I gave you material and then I tested you on it, and you got all the questions right, that means you got everything right that I've asked you so far. It doesn't necessarily mean you've completely mastered the entire standard. You can get a 100 in a standard, but you're going to see that not on an individual assignment, but overall. If you keep getting 4 pluses all the way through, you're going to end up with a 4++. Because look at the data, clearly, you get everything all the time, 100. Kids don't usually get 100 on a 6 weeks average. Sometimes. It's easier to get 100 on a standard than it is 100 in an average in a traditional model. And if you get 100, it's awesome. That is awesome. So what if I want a higher grade on the standard? Well, then learn more. Sounds easy, but it's not. For higher achieving kids, it is. For lower achieving kids, it's like pulling teeth. If the data shows that you don't understand at the level that you think you do, then do something and prove it. The data will report the accurate score. You've got to make sure your data shows the score. If you want your student to pass everything, then make sure they get to that 1 and that they show the teacher that they can. If they failed every single assignment or assessment, they need to figure out what the teacher will accept as evidence. They do it, they give it to her. It could be an interview, it could be doing something again, it could be creating something at home and coming in and explaining it. We have kids that write essays, we have all kinds of things. If you want your student to make straight A's and you're pulling 3s all the time, look at what the 4 is, tell them what they need to learn, find it, and do something to show to the teacher that you're a 4. We had a student last week in chemistry, right when grades were due. The teacher said this student is a consistent 4- student. She's consistent 3+, 4-. I mean, she's a solid student, every single standard all the time. She said she's had it, she wants 100. So she said, well then learn it. So she did, she came in, she said she wrote me a 2-page essay front and back on this standard. I tell you what, we could have published this thing. It was gorgeous, I gave her 100. Kids can self-select. Is this a change and weird and kids don't understand it? And we absolutely. I hear this a lot. I want to be clear here, and you guys can be the ambassadors for the community. Redo, retest is a law. It's not standards-based. How that's interpreted, discretionary by district and campus. Okay? But it's a law. SBG, we don't really like redos. It's not intended for redo. We don't really have redo. That's what we've turned into the last month, and we got to change that. It's not about redo. It's about do more. Do something else. Do it again. But what we've created in a couple of areas is kids that aren't doing homework, aren't doing the work, and then they come in and they don't do well on one of the homework quizzes, or when we have our little assessment, or when we do our whiteboard activity, or on an exit slip, or on whatever the assessment is for the day they don't do well, they don't care. They'll just take the test. If they don't do well, they'll redo it. Well, that's not how we work. At the end of the 6 weeks, last 6 weeks, I walked down the science hallway and kids were lined up, like 40 on one room, because they went to SBG, because they wanted to redo something. That's not going to happen anymore. The intention of SVG is you learn as you go, you know what you're doing. If you need to get more, you get hired. If you're absent today and you don't do this quiz, we'll just do something else tomorrow. It doesn't matter. There are multiple opportunities to show learning in the areas. But you can't just study for world history, and I'm going to focus on world history because and then not on chemistry, and then I'll just redo, because I can redo this one. We have to work through that. It's not that they don't have opportunities, but there have to be boundaries. And we need to teach them to do it daily, not, does that make sense? Please don't mishear me. We're all about achievement. I have a student too, and he's devastated with B. But you gotta learn it. Just do it, and you're good. It gives you freedom too, that you don't always have to go back and make up everything. I'm not sure that came out exactly as I wanted it to. So if you feel negative right now, know that that's not the intention. I didn't say it right. Okay? Please? All right, I think I talked about that. You know, it's interesting, people say, well, redo's not the world. Okay, but I'm going to challenge you on that just a tiny bit. Firstly, lessons, you can take as many times as you need to. Last time you flew on an airplane, you don't know how many times it took your pilot to pass for the pilot's license. Could be 3 times. Do you ask that before you get on the plane? Did you have to redo? No, because as long as he passed it, we're good. The bar exam, the SAT. How many times did we take that? A lot. How many times have you gone to pick up your car from the shop and they said, oh, I'm sorry, it's going to be another day. We have to order a part. It happens all the time. Every time you cancel a doctor's appointment. It happens all the time. When you're at home with your kid and you say, I'm going to be home in 30 minutes, make sure you take the trash cans out to the curb because it's trash day. All right. You get home, they're not done. So you don't go in and say, why did you do the trash cans? I don't know, I was tired and they were heavy. Okay, well you get a 0. I'll do it. Because that's not what you do. You say, get your butt out there and get those trash cans to the curb. And don't make me tell you again. Our world is full of standards-based. Here's what I expect you to do, you better do it. I'm not going to tell you every step, but you better do it. This is what parenting is. And then we assess by level of competency in doing that. How well did you do it? It's not about redoing an assignment, it's about learning. I love the on-the-job one because if you think about your job, if you have anybody that works for you or you work for anyone else, and you say, I need this report and I need it by Thursday or whatever. So they give you something on Thursday and you look at it and go, this is absolutely not going to work. You go, oh well, I'll submit it. No, you say, go back and fix this. There's 3 typos in this, go fix this. Come on, you better than that, right? Redo. If I'd woken up this morning and felt kind of tired, I couldn't have taken a 0. Thanks for coming, parents. I'm going to take a 0. So, see you later. We don't do that. There are no zeros in the real world. There aren't. Just like if I don't do a good job today, I'm going to have to do a redo. Everything is data. You can't opt out on anything. So how is this preparing them for college? You know, if they don't have the understanding that they need to be successful in college, we're not doing our job. You know, when I worked at the middle school for 4 years, it was funny because teachers said, we have to prepare for high school, we have to prepare for high school. High school, they said, we've got to prepare for college, we've got to prepare for college. Well, when are they here? When do we teach them what we need to teach them now? Because a freshman is not ready for college. They're not ready for college in many ways. By the time they're seniors, hopefully they will have the work habits, the work skills, the understanding, the input-output relationship. They'll know what it takes to be successful, and when they go to college, they will be, because in college, you don't get 5 or 10 grades in a grading period, you get 2. And you say, well, you don't get to redo those? Okay. Sometimes you don't, sometimes colleges do. But most of the time they don't. But I'll tell you something else. If you don't do well at the end of this class, and say you make an F or a D or whatever, and you want to pay to retake the class, you can, and the grade replaces it on your transcript. We don't do that here. It's just different. Are we trying to prepare your kids for college? Absolutely. Real world? Absolutely. Soft skills, how to process, communicate, manage your time, advocate for yourself, know what you need to do. Did you do it? Evaluate it, and can you do it again? And did you get what you deserved? Yes. That's what we're preparing kids for. You know, I want to commend you, firstly, because I know it's been a challenge. Change is hard. It's hard for us. But it's about commitment, and we're committed. I don't like all the things that are coming down from the state, but those aren't my decisions. My job is to do my best to where our school works within the parameters of the state so that kids learn the most and are the most successful. We don't want kids learning to suffer. We don't want the grades to suffer. We want them to be appropriate, and we want the kid to leave here and be successful at the next step. College or career readiness. That's the goal. I thank you, not only for being here, but I thank you for your support, whether you realize you're giving it to us or not. By you caring, lets us know we're on the right track, because you care, because we care. We need to be a partner with you. We're on your side. You need us, and we need you. And that's what I need to create and I need to foster. If you have a question about standards-based grading, ask the teacher. I can tell you the philosophy. If you go to this is our website. If you go to that 21st century tab right there, you can read lots of resources about SVG. There are videos. There's a classroom video. This will be on there as a video. The resources will be there. There's a frequently asked questions there. There's all kinds of things there. But you know, I want you to know if it's the last thing you realize as you walk out, is I want the message to be clear that we are not trying to just change because we think it'd be easier for us. We are not trying to do anything to experiment with your kids. We have evaluated, we have worked hard and laborious to try to say what is it that we need to do to not do the crouton. I don't think you want a crouton. Because when it's all said and done, it's never going to be a salad unless you shake it up. And I apologize for all the frustrations. When you send me an email with questions and frustrations, I want you to know for every one I get from you, I get 10 from other people. I try to answer them quickly, deliberately, and professionally. And if you are in this room, a couple of you I even recognize, I know that I have answered one that you've sent me. I want you to know that I spend a lot of my day answering emails that can often be answered by the teacher. I don't have all the information. If you talk to the teacher and you don't get what you want, you come to me. If you only want to come to me, okay. Okay? If you have a question about why is it a 2? Why didn't she get this? How can she get to the A? Why isn't this? How come there's not another grade? What if she didn't? Ask the teacher. If you hear something that doesn't align with the philosophy that you heard today, you let me know. You talk to the teacher, because we're working through this. And I'll tell you something else. In a traditional classroom, every teacher is so different. The first day of school, your kids, and you too when you were in school, you sat in there for the first 5 minutes and looked at that teacher and thought, all right, what's this going to be like? Is she going to be easy or hard? Is she going to do completion grades on math? Is she going to grade really strict? Do you think she reads everything? I wonder if she's going to grade everything. I wonder how her tests are. I heard she was the easiest one. I heard she was the hardest one. You know that. You look and you evaluate what's important to her so that I can do what she wants to get the grade that I want. That's the world. We do that with our bosses. We do that with our teachers. We do that with The lady that we're trying to return something to that's past the 90 days. I mean, we do it all. We evaluate so that we can reach our goal. Same thing true in an SVG classroom. We're individuals, we're people, they're different. They have the same quirks they had when they were traditional graders. They're same. The philosophy is different, the paradigm is different, and the way we interpret learning is different. Does that make sense? Because it's so consistent between the teams as to what the criteria is for grading is why you probably feel as though there are inconsistencies, because it's never been consistent before. Some teachers counted this for 10 points, some for 2, some didn't count these at all, some didn't count homework, some did completion grades for homework. There was a lot of inconsistencies out there. I appreciate you coming today. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope you learned a lot. If I can just have a real quick hands, I'd like to know 1 to 5. Where were you when you walked in? First, let me see your hands. Where were you when you walked in? Good. There's some 2s, a 3. Good. Awesome. Where do you feel like you are now? 1 through 5. Awesome. Thank you for coming. I know that we are at our time. I've spoken for 12 minutes too long. But I apologize for that. If you need to go, please do. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer some questions for a few minutes, and then we'll let you go and we'll head on back to do some work to help your kids.